All right, everybody. Good morning and welcome. Today, we're going to learn about a career in financial services with First Tech Credit Union. But before we start, let's do a little housekeeping. Make sure you check in, and that's how your teacher knows that you're here in this event. And if you have some questions, you can refer to these great question documents. And most importantly, the evaluation form. This is how we give you credit and this is a requirement for you to graduate in high school. Always to make sure you're on mute, but you can turn on your camera. It's nice to see faces, and you're not going to be on the recording. Be fully present, pay attention, ask questions, and again, submit your evaluation right after this event. So it's everything you've knowledge you gain, it's still fresh. And again, this is how we give you credit for you to graduate. And that is it.
All righty. Well, we will take it away then. Goldilocks, thank you so much. Hello, my name is Emily Zeitman. I am the Community Engagement Manager over at First Tech Federal Credit Union. And I'm just going to provide a quick introduction to First Tech and what a credit union is prior to us jumping into a question and answer session with 3 employees at the credit union. So First Tech Federal Credit Union was founded in 1952 by employees at Hewlett-Packard, which is also known as HP, and the company Tektronix, which is right over in Beaverton. Some of you may be familiar with it. Some of you may be wondering, what is a credit union? And I'm curious to know, folks are welcome to chat it in or unmute yourselves. Does anyone here on the call know the difference between a credit union and a bank? All right, it looks like I have some no's so far, which is totally okay. I was unfamiliar myself before working at First Tech. So just a very quick, a little piece of information here. Banks are for profit, meaning that they are either privately owned or publicly traded, while credit unions are not-for-profit institutions that are technically owned by the members that are part of that credit union. And unlike a traditional bank, First Tech is governed by a 100% volunteer board of directors comprised of First Tech members. Members at First Tech can hold savings accounts, loans, credit cards, and other various banking products that you would traditionally see at any financial institution. And now, before we dive into our panelists, I wanted to quickly mention 2 programs that we have here at First Tech related to education. So every First Tech employee at the organization qualifies for the Education Reimbursement Program, which is a little over $5,000 per year that can go toward you pursuing additional forms of education. We also have a scholarship program for our members, and that is 10 $5,000 scholarships per year that are awarded out to 5 students that are pursuing STEM-related fields in higher education and 5 other educational fields as well. So I quickly wanted to mention that all to you in case you are looking to pursue higher education post high school, and definitely check it out on our website. All righty, we're going to dive into our panelist introductions now. We have 3 folks from a variety of different departments here at First Tech, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We're going to begin with Ashley. And Ashley, if you could please share your name, your pronouns, your job profession, and the length of time you've been at First Tech.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here this morning. My name is Ashley Scola. My pronouns are she, her. I have been with First Tech for 3.5 years, and my title is the Senior Fraud Operations Manager. Well, it's the Senior Fraud Manager. I oversee the detection and investigations team within fraud operations.
Great. Thank you so much. C-Rock, let's move on to you.
Hi guys, my name is Sirak Mesmur. I've been with First Tech a little over 10 years in different departments. Currently, in the last few years, I've been with card operations department, specifically with card disputes. And yeah, that's my occupation.
That's great. Thank you. Isabel?
Hey. Hi, so my name is Isabel Gonzalez. My pronouns are her and she. I've been with First Tech for almost 7 years. I'm a manager too, over at our Cornell Hillsborough location, just down the street from our corporate office. And, you know, my job entails helping our members that are part of the credit union, both employees and non-employees. I get the opportunity to meet members on their best day, and I get the opportunity to help them on their worst day. So our team deals with a lot, especially when we're thinking of the pandemic and how this has affected a lot of people. We've been able to, you know, assist a lot of our members to help them through those financial journeys that they're going through. And of course, help my employees grow and learn.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I appreciate you all touching on your job functions. I'm curious to hear from all of you very briefly, what does the day-to-day look like in your careers? And can you provide some information about the education or training that may be required to pursue a career such as yours? And Ashley, can we start with you again?
Yes, absolutely. So the day-to-day for me is pretty crazy on a day-to-day. I call it email jail Tetris because or meeting jail Tetris, I'll say, because it is a lot of meetings in a leadership position, especially in fraud. Things happen very quickly and rapidly that we have to respond to with new fraud trends or threats, and then also just managing a large team of about 15 people. For my team, their days are different based on the roles that they're in. My triage team, they actually review fraud alerts on suspicious activity to determine if we need to take action on the accounts. And the education requirements for that is just high school preferred. We do look for folks specifically if they have any experience within financial institutions or being in a supportive function where they are familiar with fraud. Because of that, we get a lot of internal folks that come from other departments and join my group just because they see fraud in their day-to-day. My investigations team and their day-to-day, they are actually reviewing high dollar fraud cases, cases where our members may even be a suspect, and then working very closely with law enforcement. We work with all levels of law enforcement, even with the FBI, Homeland Security, to really help partner with other financial institutions and law enforcement to try to stop fraud as a whole. And that's what I really love about working out as a credit union, is that we're really enabled to do that and empowered to do that, because we don't want to just stop fraud for First Tech. We really want to be part of the driving force that reduces fraud across the industry. And so that's what most of our day is really looking for suspicious accounts, restricting them, and then dealing with escalations and really trying to balance between member friction and fraud security, because you can't stop every single transaction that presents some red flags, because there's a lot of normal activity that might have those, but really making sure and refine what parameters and what filters you use to try to stop as much fraud as possible while letting your legitimate members have that seamless experience.
Great, that was perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. C-Rock, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. So the question was, what does the day-to-day activity looks like in cards operations, especially in disputes department or for myself, and what kind of people do we look for or have in this department? It's good questions. So the day-to-day is, let me just give you some context so that I can explain the relationship, right? So one of the core relationships that you may have with any financial institution is your checking, maybe savings accounts. With those checking and savings accounts comes with ATM cards, debit cards, or credit cards. These are your tools to help you access your accounts and easily purchase things from a store, online, or whatever means that you want to buy things. But you have some responsibility as a card holder. You have the responsibility to safeguard your cards. The financial institution has responsibility to make sure your debit card is active and working, and all the things that it needs to run has to be there. And the merchants that you deal with have responsibility also to protect your information. But what happens is sometimes these things don't always work 100%. As Ashley just mentioned, there is fraud that needs to be prevented. But what happens when that fraud takes place? Your card is compromised and somebody else uses your card to purchase things without your authorization. My department, after these things happen, will take that information and try to recover those transactions that were purchased on your debit or credit card or ATM without your authorization. So the day-to-day is we get information from our members via online banking or directly to our branches or a phone call to First Tech saying, hey, there are transactions on my account that I didn't authorize. Or in some cases, it could be non-fraud where you have legitimately purchased an item with a merchant, but you're not happy with that transaction. So we can help, right? So we take that information and it comes in digitally or electronically to us into our system. We analyze the information, take a look and see all kinds of things. There are data that we collect from the type of transaction it is, when the card was used, what kind of card it is, all of that stuff, right? And then we say, okay, we will try to recover these transactions for you. There are rules, right? There are rules that the card holder has to really manage their cards correctly. You cannot share your card to others. The financial institution has also rules and regulations that they have to abide by, and also the merchants. So within the guardrails of those rules, we'll try to get the money back to our card holders. And that's our job, is to investigate and see what happened. We could not prevent it, but now it has happened. Now we'll try to recover it for you. That's the day-to-day. So again, we'll look at the transaction history, the data. We'll file what we call a chargeback to the merchant and ask, these transactions were not authorized by our card holder, so please return the money. And the merchant will look at that information and say, hey, this transaction was conducted in such a way, yes, we approve this was fraudulently charged, so we'll return the money so you can give it back to the card holder. Or they can say, no, this transaction was done in such a way that electronically we have verified that PIN number was used or chip on the card was used. So the card holder's responsibility had failed here, so we're not going to return the money. So there is that. So what kind of folks do we have working here? It does not require that you have a degree, a college degree. But to start with in this department, we like to have folks that have some financial institution background, at least understand the relationship that a financial institution would have with this member. Meaning, if he had worked at a branch as a teller, if he had worked in any of the back offices of any financial institution, then you have learned some degree of a banking relationship or a financial relationship that you can have with a bank, right? So that background will help you settle into a department like mine very easily. It will be an easy transition because you already know what are some of the rules and requirements. The rest of it is really teaching you the many different applications that we have to do or conduct our research. Like Ashley said, day to day, we're busy, it's hectic. But one of the things that it helps me and I recommend to others is really time management. Time management, you give priority to the things that are high on priority level. You follow up on things when the time is right. At the end of the day, you do most of the things that's required of you, and then you do follow up when you can. So on a day-to-day basis, that's what it looks like. The folks that we hire, we usually start with beginners, data entry stuff, and then we'll move them into, once they learn all the applications, we move them into an investigative mode. So a little bit of analytical skills is very helpful. People who can just put things together is very helpful, but we guide them. We have training departments that really help you get into the system. We also have really guidelines from different sources that we follow. So those guidelines would be given as classroom education. So yeah, that's what it looks like.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like your department and Ashley's department, if there is a suspected fraudulent activity, may work fairly closely together on a regular basis.
Absolutely. I will answer for this one right quick, Ashley, and if you want to add more to it is great. Yes, there are a lot of departments really work together in any financial institutions. And one, for example, would be mine and Ashley's department. Like I said earlier, Ashley's department really prevents the transactions, the fraud transactions from happening in the first place. They have different tools, right? Different algorithms. They calculate what could possibly be a fraud transaction. We don't want to stop every high dollar transaction because some of them are legitimate. But how do you filter those that may not be legitimate transactions? And fraudsters are very, very, very clever, and they're always one step ahead of the technology. Am I wrong, Ashley? I'm sure you can testify to that.
You are very correct. Yeah, and that's why our team has to review those alerts that we get to determine if we do think it is fraud. And I just wanted to expand on that a little bit. In my team, it's such a wide scope of duties. We have our card fraud investigations that work very closely with our cards disputes team. And then we also investigate any of the deposit account fraud, like wires, ACH, checks, general scams that we have. And part of my team, like on the triage side, we're very much looking at what goes into the rules, but we also do the investigation piece on like the deposit account activity, where the card disputes would go over to Sirach's team first. If it's a suspicious deposit or a wire transfer, our investigations team opens up those cases, works with the members in law enforcement to figure out what happens. And I just wanted to, something I forgot real fast is for the education requirement for our investigators, they do typically require a 4-year degree, but it can be in years of experience as well. For example, one of my investigators, they do not have a 4-year degree, but they've been in fraud specifically for over 10 years. And so it's a wide range of skill sets that you can join our team and then progressively move up, as Sirach was saying, for his team as well.
Great. Thank you both so much for that. I see we have some questions being chatted in, and we're going to hold them until the end if that's all right with folks, but I promise we will get to them. Isabel, can you please share the day-to-day in your role and the education or training that may be required? Also, please feel free to introduce your coworker, who I noticed had joined us for a little bit there.
So I have my 4-month-old, Cassian. Who was named after a Star Wars character. I don't know if you guys can see that we have Star Wars helmets right behind me. So here he is. You might say woo here or there, but that's the reality of working parents. So, you know, at the Experience Center, which is what we refer to as relatives, it varies, right? Our day-to-day that we have. My particular role would be more similar to Ashley's, where I have a lot of meetings. We're constantly thinking of how do we share what First Tech is to our community and to our what's referred to select employer groups. So Like if your parents work at Intel, Nike, Microsoft, our credit union is really catered to try and meet their financial needs. But at the same time, we want to be a very integral part of the community. So with me, I'm constantly on meetings in regards to how do we expand that. And then at the same time, it's very important for me as a leader to help my employees progress to different departments or different avenues. Like for example, they might end up working for Ashley's team or Sirach's team. I mean, that's actually quite common that it happens, and that's what we do. So the branch is almost like that stepping stone for that next change. But we have a statement on our site that says no matter what life stage you're in, you can have a bank you can count on. And what that's referring to is my bankers, because we don't have tellers, we just have bankers, really are there to help our members through whatever financial life stage that they're in. Like, for example, you're still in high school, you're just about to get out of high school, you're going to go to college, and you're going to start your careers eventually. So what are you going to do to set yourself up so when you're outside of college, you know how to refinance your student loans if you have that. You know what pathway to purchase a home. You want to get your first awesome vehicle because you just did your degree or you went to trade school or you have your first job. We want to be there to guide you all the way through. And that, you know, deals with a lot of adaptability, right? Can we think of different levels of financial needs, right? A 19-year-old's finances are going to be different than someone who's getting ready to retire in their 60s. And so we have to be pretty versatile in regards to that kind of education. And then, of course, empathy, right? What if someone got scammed and now we're having to deal with the fact that they're missing all this money and we can't bring it back. And I have to have that uncomfortable conversation of, this might not be a real boyfriend, right? They're just trying to take your money. But then on the plus side, you just purchased your first home. That's awesome. What are we doing to ensure that you're saving so that you can make those repairs that you want for your home? So we deal with a lot of, business mindset. How do we help person fit those long-term goals and how do they fit those short-term goals? And requires a lot of communication, a lot of empathy, and a lot of collaboration within our own team. And of course, our partners, because if I do have someone there, I need to depend on Ashley's team to help me determine, is this check real? Is this check not? The situation sounds weird. They lost their debit card, they lost their credit card, and now they're having all these fraudulent charges. So then I work with the Rock team. So the nice part of my particular place is that we work with a lot of different departments to ultimately help our members reach those same goals and help them through any sort of trying situation. As far as education goes, you do not need to have a degree, right, to start out as a banker. And same thing as a leader, it could be in lieu of years of experience. But what we do look for is a sales background, because we do have goals, and sales usually typically prepare you to have that mindset of how do I meet these day-to-day metrics. Because we are a not-for-profit, we still do create a profit, but that's invested back into our members, invested back into our community. And so we want to ensure that we're still able to provide the services that our members need and continuously evolve them, which is pretty cool. And like with student loan refinancing, that was something our members have vocalized and said they wanted for a very long time. And we've been able to have it now for almost 3 to 4 years. And we brought that product on specifically for them. So that's the nice part about being part of this credit union, is that we get the feedback, we present it, and we find ways to help them. And then we're there to help them throughout that journey.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Isabel, for sharing that. All right, we're going to dive into kind of the problems you all may be solving, which I know many of you touched on a little bit, but to get a little more granular, is there a scenario or maybe some possible actions that you've done in the past that you would be willing to talk about, and maybe something that you felt proud of in that moment and specific scenario? Ashley, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I'll give you just a quick rundown of the different types of problems that my team sees day to day, and then kind of the problems that I help them through. My triage team, their typical problems are when they're looking at those alerts, trying to determine is this suspicious enough to restrict these accounts and potentially make an inconvenience for a true member? Or is this something that we need to let go? What's the risk profile there? And really trying to make those decisions. A big issue that we have is when we have fraud trends or fraud peaks, we'll have a lot of volumes at one time. And so our team has become really agile in cross-training. And so I have folks who know their core duties of what they're aligned to do, but because fraud volumes can fluctuate so quickly without a moment's notice, we really make sure that our team knows how to pivot into the other roles to support their team when those problems do arise. Our investigations team, they handle our established member cases. And as Isabel was saying, a lot of what they do is really helping our members through that really unfortunate situation of being a victim of a scam. And the regulations are always changing, but a lot of the times, if you are a victim of a scam, the fraudsters do it in such a way that you are authorizing them to take those funds, even though you're not knowing what's going on. You may even perform the transaction yourself. A lot of members will be manipulated into going and buying gift cards for a scammer. And unfortunately, there are limitations in what we can reimburse them for, because we do have to protect the whole membership from this. And so a lot of those problems are trying to really help people through some of those situations that are really unfortunate, and also being an advocate for them, because unfortunately what a lot of folks in financial crime don't understand is that they are being pulled in as a money mule to move these funds. So they're wrapped in a scam, but they're part of this much larger criminal enterprise where they're being used as a mule to move dirty money really from one account to another in this very intricate, elaborate web that helps the organized criminals hide behind it. So they unfortunately use members of the population. They prey on their weaknesses, whether it's loneliness, as you had said, it's not your real boyfriend, or thinking it's a job opportunity or a lottery or an investment. There's so many different ways, especially with how the internet, we're all able to reach everyone across the globe, that they're able to exploit these vulnerabilities. And so that is one of the big problems that we solve for. Another one, as Sarak said, is we do work on trying to prevent the fraud. So we investigate it if it happens, but we also take that information and do a very quick feedback loop to our data analytics team within my department, and we change those rules. So we see a new trend coming, we get together, we're like, okay, what are you seeing? What are the patterns? How do we think they're getting in? And then we quickly adjust our control so that we can stop it. And that has been something that First Tech, especially as we've grown over just the last few years even, we're really on the cutting edge of being able to do that and to have that dynamic, because in institutions, when they're large, it's hard to make these big system changes that affect a lot of processes. So as a leader, I'm not only trying to solve the day-to-day hiccups in my team's roles, I call myself the street sweeper, is I just try to remove the roadblocks so that they can do their job well. But I'm working with all the other departments, with our call center, with our branches, card services, collections for when folks do need to pay back those funds. The legal team, we work very closely with them, and making all of these cross-functional processes where they're working smoothly and everyone is able to get the right information to where it's not impacting their roles as much, and really helping the whole enterprise know what these red flags are for fraud and how to react when you do see them. Because a lot of times you might see someone and think it's suspicious, but if you don't know where to turn to, who to tell, what next steps to take, you might just think, oh, I don't want to cause a problem, so I'll just let it go through. But when you know exactly how to reach out to the fraud team for that immediate support, where they can help you what to do. Is this suspicious enough that we should lock it down and create a case? We're really there for our partners to try to be just a really great team all together to stop fraud as a whole throughout the business.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Sirak, would you like to share next scenarios, possible actions you took?
Absolutely. Honestly, there are always scenarios of different level that you face every day. You can't panic. You can't say, "Oh my God, I quit." You strategize. You look at the situation. You assess the situation, the damage, and you take actions. As I actually said, there's the technology that changes every day that you have to keep up. There are rules and regulations that change often that you have to keep up, educate yourself. The rest of it, I would say our biggest challenge for my department, for dispute department, is the volume of disputes that may come in on a single day. We may be staffed to do average 150 to 200 individual disputes. When I say individual disputes, one transaction counts for one individual dispute, whereas one debit card can have 10 transactions on it, right? But in some cases, like I mentioned earlier, as a card holder, as a member, we all have responsibility to safeguard our cards or card numbers. As a financial institution, the financial institution's responsibility is to make sure all debit cards, the credit cards, ATM cards are working or functioning correctly and as designed. And the merchants also have responsibility to safeguard your information because they have your card number every time that you purchase an item. If any of these situations break down and there is a compromise, some place, maybe even outside of the United States, fraudsters can get data downloaded to their advantage and use these debit ATM cards fraudulently. And they hit us hard with thousands and thousands of transactions with the use of their fast computers. When that happens, and in some cases when that type of fraud is not prevented, it ends up being disputed. So when you're staffed to do 150 transactions a day and you have 1,000, that brings a challenge to any department when you have that many. But we have to prepare for these kind of things. Yes, we're staffed for that many, but what do we do with the remaining 850 extra disputes that we get today, right? What are the steps that we take? What actions do we take so that we are within rules, we are within regulations, we are within that guardrail of the time service requirements that we have or regulation requirements that we have? Do we need to replace 1,000 debit cards because those card numbers are compromised? That's another fact of this. What kind of processes we put in place to recover X amount of disputes, whereas the remaining could be just small dollar amounts that will just take the loss. There are decisions that have to be made. These are some of the challenges that we face in the dispute department, along with, of course, staffing is very important, right? You have to have the right people doing the right thing. System is another thing. We have automated as much as we can. So it's not, everything is not on paper like it used to be several years back. So everything is digital, everything is electronics, everything is stored in our systems. And we have configured most of our systems to interface each other so that one action you take on your laptop can have multiple things that it can do on different applications and different systems. Just to give you a quick example, if I need to debit a member or credit a member, they lost $50 and I need to put $50 back into their account because that loss was recovered. I don't need to go to a frontline person and say, hey, here is $50. Go ahead and put this $50 in so-and-so's account because they lost it last week because of this fraudulent transaction. No, I can do it from home remotely by using certain applications, of course, secured. Transfers can be done from different sources to your account by making these kind of actions because the systems are integrated. So the more automation that we have to do these things, the faster we can get to those 1,000 disputes a day. I hope I answered the question.
Yep. No, that is perfect. Thank you so much. Isabel, would you like to go next and discuss maybe the problems you solve as an experience center manager?
Yes. So, right now, the biggest thing that we're trying to solve too is how do we stay open and how do we protect our employees, right? How do we ensure that we're all doing our part so that we're still able to help our members, right? There's still a need. To Sirach's point, if their debit card has been compromised, a lot of them can't wait the 7 to 10 business days to get that debit card in the mail. So then they're going to come into my center to try and get that debit card. Knowing that staffing levels are very limiting right now, especially with trying to protect them, protect our members, my day-to-day problem is I might have to tell you it's a 2-hour wait, right? It's not a fun conversation to have, but unfortunately that's the reality of it. And so I'm trying to solve to how do I help our members know how to set appointments up, right? Maybe you can't get it today, but let me save you some time, get you on our calendar, have you come in tomorrow, and we can certainly assist you with that need. But at the same time, if they do come in for that need, what are their long-term goals? What are they going through financially that we could assist them best with? Because the one thing I'm very proud of with First Tech, and a lot of things that we talk about problems is, a lot of people were hit hard financially, a lot of our members, and First Tech did a great job of trying to figure out how to pause a payment for a loan or an auto loan or a credit card, how to help them through that time. And, that takes a lot of manpower to have that conversation. And we just don't have the staff at the moment to be able to do that. To Sirach's and Ashley's point is we want to be there to be, best help our members. But the reality is if, more than one employee goes down, that there's a big wrench. And so my job deals a lot with the people aspect of it, both internally and externally. So we're consistently trying to solve to how do we still provide the best member experience, but how do we also ensure that our employees are taken care of and aren't feeling burnt out because of how busy it tends to be. And I do have the busiest center with the largest head count. And, some days it just doesn't feel like it's enough. And some days it feels like it's too much. So it's how do we make both of those days the most effective and ensuring that we're there for our members and our employees. And, that is basically how our day-to-day functions every day. Like, for example, today, we have 3 employees that are ill, right? My center normally works with 11 in the center a day to function correctly. Today, we're working with 5. So how do we ensure that we're helping all of our appointments that we have scheduled and at the same time being mindful of our members that are maybe going through a fraudulent situation and don't have the time to wait? How do we coordinate all of that and help them at the end of the day? So that's what our day-to-day struggles tend to be. And that's why I said being adaptable is key in that role because we do pay you for your performance and, for doing well. And so being able to take a deep breath, knowing that maybe your schedule might vary a little bit in regards to what you're doing for the day, not so much the hours. We open and we close same time every single day. But, maybe you're not going to be in drive up today. Maybe you have to be in drive up and at a desk today and try and be flexible, transitioning back and forth. But knowing that your leaders will fully support you through that moment. And hey, sometimes I'll step up as the drive up teller to ensure that my banker has the opportunity to assist that member and meet their own goals.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. To maximize on our time, I'm going to omit some of the questions that we originally planned for and just kind of hone in on some of these questions here for our panelists. So moving right along, I'm curious to hear from all 3 of you. What aspects of your occupation do you like the best and which do you like the least? Ashley, can we start with you again?
Yes, absolutely. There's so many things that I love about my job. One of them is catching fraudsters. Who doesn't love that? It is so fun. My team has served on grand juries to actually help even local fraud rings, be prosecuted for their crimes and to try to stop that. That's something it's great to me. There's nothing better than justice to try to help all the people out there. That's one of the other things is really helping the victims of fraud. Like I said before, there's a lot of scam situations and where the funds leave the door. And for wire scam, for example, there's a lot of business email compromises or mortgage scams where they will hack your email when someone's right in the middle of buying a house and they think they're wiring the money to the loan office, but they're actually sending it to the fraudster because they've given them a bad account to send it to. And wires are guaranteed funds. They're out the door. We can't force that other institution to return it, but my team works so hard and so quickly to partner with the other institutions to get that money back if we can. One of the biggest accomplishments that I'm so proud of my team for is their quick reaction. And that's what I love about a credit union is that we spend our time trying to get these funds back, even though it's not a loss to the institution, it's for our member. And one example was we had a member that was scammed during their mortgage process and had wired a fraudster $375,000, their whole life savings to buy a house. And that money's gone. We can't force them to get it back. But due to one of our investigators' really quick action and diligent following up on this, we were able to get back almost all of it for that member. And that's, changing lives. So that's huge. For me, it's also about being there for my team and to support my team. A lot of the times we do struggle with the volumes and the staffing resources. So just being there for them, helping them decide, what is a priority, and just reminding them that they are the most important thing at the end of the day. So in fraud, it can be very easy to, let the day slip by and keep working because you know how important it is what you're doing. But we also have to set those healthy boundaries to where we can disconnect at the end of the day. And that's really trying to, help my team grow in that understanding that you guys are awesome. And for you to keep doing your best the time that you should be at work, please make sure that we set healthy boundaries and do, take some time off because we are salary. So the lines can get a little blurry when we do have all those, high dollar fraud transactions pending, and we really want to get there to provide that support, but making sure that we do take care of ourselves because we're not going to be good to anyone if we just burn ourselves out. So that's what I really do love about my role. One of the least things is that it can be stressful. You are really dealing with, high dollar quick decisions. I often have to make decisions about whether or not we're going to approve something that might have some red flags. And it could be $25,000 up to $100,000. And you have to be able to make those decisions really quickly and then be comfortable with the decisions you made based on the information you had at that time. And so one of the most critical parts is to be able to have that emotional intelligence and stress management so that you can flourish in those environments instead of letting it kind of consume you.
Thank you for sharing that. C-Rock, what aspects of your occupation do you like the best and which do you like the least? Or which do you least like?
Yeah, whatever Ashley said, all true. That's a short answer. No, first of all, personally, what this job means to me, right? There's a lot of things that I evaluate. How I feel about this job. Is it the right temperament? Is it the right tone? Does it stress me all day long? Do I hate my job? Or all of these things you have to evaluate when you're on a job and you've been on it as long as I have with this position, right? So all of those things are it's just the right speed, it's the right temperament for me where I can handle this job and I enjoy it to some extent. Yes, it comes with responsibility. Don't forget that. It's not always fun, right? As long as you know what your responsibilities, your duties are, it can be handled, right? Is it the right pay scale? Is it the right first? Just to give you a quick example, you notice we are all working from home. right? Being remote is another privilege that I have. I can just get up in the morning. I used to have to drive 45 minutes to work. Now I don't have to, right? I can just go straight to this other room and come here and do my work and go downstairs and have my lunch. So this is great. I mean, yes, COVID brought this upon us. I used to work one day out of the 5. Now I work all 5 days from the office. So those are the things. But what do I enjoy the most? I guess that's the core of the question, right? What is it that I like about this job is really we are member centric. We do all of this for our members, right? Yes, we have to protect our credit union, our this organization. At the same time, the core value of it is to protect your member. So when somebody or a card holder comes to us and say, hey, I lost $2,000. I did not do this transaction. This is not my doing. I need to recover this money. And we put together, we take action and we recover that $2,000 for this member. And that's really is what we do and what we enjoy, right? In some cases, I mentioned earlier, it's not always fraudulent transaction. You may have done a legitimate, what you thought was a legitimate transaction with a scammer. They promised to do this, that, but they didn't deliver on what they promised. And that member comes to us and say, hey, I can't take this person to court, but it's on my debit transaction, so my debit card. I did this transaction. I knew at the time this person was saying things that made it look legitimate, but they have not provided the services or the merchandise they promised me. So I need to get it back. So then we take action, and then we do the things that we need to do to file the chargeback I mentioned earlier and get that money back. Now, it's not always the merchant's fault. You have to understand, card holders have their responsibility as well. What did you sign up for? Is this a buyer's remorse, or is this really truly a scam? Is this something that somewhere the merchant did something wrong, or you didn't understand what you were going to get for what you paid? So it's not always the merchant doing something wrong. Card holders have also that responsibility. So our job is to make sure to get to the bottom of that, make sure we do the right thing. And that balance, yes, we first and foremost, we take our members' word and say, hey, okay, let's go ahead and help this person. But as within that process, if we find out the cardholder actually had received what they were told they would receive, then that's the end of the investigation. To make it short, my answer is yes, those are the things that we enjoy the most, is really helping our members recover their money.
Thank you. Isabel, can you share with us what you like best and what you may least like about your occupation?
Sure. So I'll say the least, so I can end on a positive note. Clearly, that's what I like to do. I think the least favorite thing is, there's a lot of things that aren't within my control with working the experience center. And I have the luxury of being able to come in and work remotely 1 day a week because we have a lot of things we have to be in compliance for when we're dealing with members' money, transactions that we do, temporary checks, things that we just do general there. We have the federal compliance, we have First Tech compliance, and then within our own region, we have compliance, right? But it's, things that aren't within my control, right? Like today, my staff is down to 5. I want to go and help, right? I want to just be like, okay, I'll find a backup sitter and I'll go and do that. But I have to play that mindset with myself, just as I would with my employee. I wouldn't expect them to come in on the day off. At the end of the day, our doors will open and our doors will close at a certain time. So that I would say is my least favorite. And then of course, that pandemic is hard. Some people are happy to come on in and do their transactions. Some people are very upset. And so we need to just understand that they're not mad at us personally, that they're just mad about perhaps the situation they're going through, but sometimes we end up being that punching bag. And so it's how do I ensure there's that fine line of respect with our member and our employee and First Tech. So that's my least favorite. No one wants to go in and yell at somebody, right? But my favorite part is the development I get to do with my employees. It's always been a passion of mine. It's why I've been in leadership for as long as I have. And it's why I've remained in banking for 21 years now at this point. But a fun fact is I recently transferred to the new location at Cornell last year, right before giving birth. And I was able to progress an old banker of mine as my assistant branch manager. So that's pretty cool. Then the current branch manager at the Tannis One location was my assistant branch manager before I moved over. And so his assistant was my assistant, but now our new trainer for retail banking, that employee was one of my bankers. So it's just nice to see the kind of influence that, you know, I personally can instill in my employees and help them think beyond just what's in front of them, and then seeing how that impacts our credit union. That's my favorite part. So being able to see their names and getting shout outs and seeing them progress their own careers is why I stay as long as I have. And it's why I'm fighting the urge not to just go over there today and be like, how can I help? Because I want them to know that, again, they're my priority and their success is my success at the end of the day. So it's just nice to be able to see them facilitate those career choices, and kind of nice to be like, oh yeah, almost everyone in Oregon I actually trained. So I do like them.
That is so cool. Thank you so much for sharing that, Isabel. And, you know, one of the credit union mottos is people helping people. And it's pretty clear that every single job that these three folks hold really has that mission come true in the day-to-day. So I'm going to pause the questions I have so that we can get to students' questions, because there are some really great questions in the chat here. I am going to start with the first question here. Do you have to worry about local regulations, or is it universal depending on state to state? That is a really good question. And I wonder, maybe Ashley, does that sound like a question you would be able to answer?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. We have to, there's various regulations. There's regulations on like the card side that are governed by like MasterCard that are universal for all MasterCard holders. There is banking federal regulations, and then there's also state regulations. And then for my team, we do have to worry about local regulations in regards to APS reporting. So if we suspect elder financial abuse, we have to report it based on the jurisdiction where our member resides. And because we have members all over the country, my team has to be very aware of each state's rules as well as potential county rules for how we report those concerns. And then something with local regulations that we've been aware of recently in regards to like CDC mandates and OSHA rules. And it's kind of like how we all get back to work. And we have to look at that because, like you guys mentioned earlier, we have employees that are even across the country. So we really do have to look at some regulations are strictly federal, some are state, and some do get down to that granular local level.
Thank you so much. And then this is a question for all three of our panelists. What steps did you take to get into this career? Sirach, would you like to begin with that question?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I didn't always start out in a financial institution. I have several different jobs before I moved to the state of Oregon back in the 90s. I was in Chicago working for a mortgage credit reporting company. Working in that environment kind of introduced me to financial activities, financial information, which I had a little bit of interest. I was in school at the time. I was in business school, which I have now my degree in business. So it was always an interest for me to know finances. And when people ask me about different kind of financial questions, not that I am an investor type financial questions, but like banking relationship financial questions. I made it to my point to really understand and talk to people about that. So so that's how I really got into it. So that job from Chicago transferred me over to Portland, Oregon, right? And that company dissolved and got bought up by a different company. So I started looking for a different career. My wife was a member of First Tech Credit Union, and she kept talking about how great it is and this and that, right? So it's like, I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a try, apply for a position there. Really, that's how I got a job with First Tech. Was she asked, she said, I've been banking with them for some time now. If you want to maybe find a job there, that might be great. So I did apply, and that's how I got the job. And once I joined, I saw the difference between credit union and bank, what you mentioned, Emily, and that really kept me here the last 12 or so years.
Thank you for sharing that journey with us.
Yeah.
Isabel, would you like to go next? What steps did you take to get into your current career?
So mine's a little different. So I am an Aloha High School alumni from 2004, aging myself there. But, back when I was there, they had a bulletin board that said like career help it was like a career course. And Washington Mutual at that time offered a high school intern position at the local Washington Mutual that was inside the Vail Surfway, which is now empty, so sad. But I started by simply going there and inquiring about the internships. I always knew that I wanted to do something different. I'm a first generation American. And so my parents were farmers back in their country, and they always wanted us to think beyond just what they were. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to give it a go, see where it's going to lead me. And, 21 years later, I'm still here. But, it was an amazing opportunity. It wasn't like I thought it out going, this is where I want to be forever. But I met a lot of great people along the way. I've done several different roles, whether it's an auditor, whether it's in fraud, whether it's in analytics, but the people part has always been my favorite. And so, First Tech, I was recruited by an old employee of mine who said I was really going to love working at First Tech. They're like, it really suits who you are to the core in regards to wanting to help people always be better versions of themselves. So I applied, and little did I know, I went to the high school with the people I interviewed with. So it just continues to grow that way. And that's how I got recruited. That's how I started in banking, and that's why I continue to stay.
That's fantastic. What a small world. Thank you for sharing that. And Ashley, we'd love to hear from you next. It does look like we're going to go over our 10 a.m. time a little bit. Goldilocks, is that all right if we continue answering questions and go over 10 a.m.?
Yes, that's okay, as long as you guys are also okay with it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Ashley, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so I actually didn't think, that I was going to be going to college or anything right out of high school. When I got out of high school, I had a lot of different customer service positions. I worked as a call center for Boost Mobile before. I worked at TJ Maxx. I worked at Target. I worked in a lot of different retail and customer service. And I found that's what I was really good at, is people and processes and making things more efficient and helping people grow as well. And then when I was pregnant with my son, when I was 22, I hated the job I was in. It was a call center where you were like making cold calls to people who had bankruptcy to help them get a car loan. But it really, I felt, wasn't in their best interest. And I was so unhappy with what I was doing that I decided to go back to school then. And so I went to school and I got my bachelor's degree in business administration and marketing. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with it, but I figured it would open up some opportunities for me. From that, 2 days after I graduated, I actually started at a large bank in their card fraud department. So I would do card disputes, like what Sarak's talking about. People would say, I didn't do this. I would investigate it, see if we had to send it to the merchant. I quickly moved up into that role and became kind of like part of their senior team. And then when I was on maternity leave with my daughter, I actually found out that they were taking their fraud department to Virginia. And I also grew up in Oregon, class of 2004 too. And so I did not want to go. I didn't want to, move to the East Coast. This was my home. So, but I'd fallen in love with fraud investigations. I loved everything about it. I'm kind of a nosy person. So it's lots of fun for me, to look through financials and try to figure out if there's something shady going on. And because of that, I went back to school and I actually got my master's degree in criminal justice. And that opened the door. And after I graduated from there, I came to work to First Tech as the assistant manager in the fraud department. And I've just worked my way up through there. We've been through a lot of crazy, trying times in fraud. One thing that I love about First Tech is because we're growing so quickly, but we're still small enough that everyone has a voice. I know when I worked at a bank before, the way you did things is the way you did things because someone 10 years ago decided that's how you were going to do it. Whereas now, my team, they bring up ideas that become very real policies and procedures, and we're always seeking to evolve. So a lot of it, I would say, is just taking challenges in my life and making them an opportunity. For example, when I was on maternity leave and they said they were taking the job away, I was like, what am I going to do? I love this job. I just had a baby. She was like 2 weeks old. And through that, I was actually eligible for the Federal Trade Act program, which helped me get my master's degree paid for. And so really just looking for those opportunities and thinking, what is the next best step for me? And you don't have to have it all figured out right away. Just think of what the next best thing that you can do and what opportunities that might lead you to, and just keeping an open mind and being confident in yourself that you really can achieve anything that you set your mind to.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. And First Tech folks, are we still okay to continue answering questions? Anyone have to drop for another meeting?
I just canceled
Okay.
it. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah, he's napping, so I'm good.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
great. Okay, thank you all so much. I appreciate it. We have some still really great questions I'm hoping we can get to. So another very important one, if the three of you have information about this and would be comfortable sharing what the salary range may be for an entry-level position in your department. Ashley, would you mind going first?
Absolutely. So for our fraud specialist, which really is that entry level that we have, you do have to have some financial institution experience, and you don't have to have a 4-year degree. That starts at about 45 to 50,000 a year. It is salary. And then our investigators, they actually, it is a 4-year degree recommended. We do try to get them to become certified fraud examiners, which is a very difficult task to achieve. They can make up to 70,000+ a year as a fraud investigator. And then for leadership, it can continue to increase from there.
Okay, thank you. That's perfect. C-Rock.
Yeah, actually, yes, there is a ladder to this, right? Entry-level positions generally will look for the background of a financial institution, right? We have within the cards department, we have card operations department. That's not doing disputes, that just does card relationship. So we look for employment from those folks that are in the card operations department because they have experience with the system and so forth. But to start with, I honestly don't know the exact dollar amounts. Would be around $18 to start with per hour for those folks that we hire with some background experience. And we grow them accordingly with their experience from that point on forward. And yes, when you get into the leadership roles within the dispute department, it goes up to the 60,000 range and above.
Great, thank you so much. That's perfect. And Isabel.
So for an entry-level banker, it's $20 an hour. It is an hourly position. There are different levels between a 1 and a senior, and it can vary, right? But I think the maximum for our senior banker would be about 27. So varies from $20 to $27 an hour. Then of course we have our assistant branch managers, and their salary starts, I believe, at
Isabel, you placed yourself on mute.
just kidding. I believe I'm trying to remember what the minimum AM expectation is, but it's higher than the 20. It's like, I think 60,000 is where the salary starts for the AM. And then of course, as a branch manager, that increases as well. As far as experience, it depends on what the center is hiring for. But for me specifically at my center, I know how hard it is to try to start somewhere new in a new career. So I don't look for financial banking background, because ultimately I can teach you that, you will learn that. But we do look for at least some job history. Retail experience would be perfect. Sales experience would be perfect, but it is not required to be banking experience. So my two most recent hires that I've had, one worked at Starbucks and one worked for T-Mobile, right? So neither of those things were a bank, right? But it was an experience where they had customer service skills, were able to do a little bit of cash handling, and had to have some form of goal setting, whether it's customer survey scores or their own personal sales goals. So that's usually what I look for. And then the average age of my recent hires have been in their early 20s, between 20 to 23. But I have all varied ages, right? I have some in their 50s, so don't discriminate with that, but just know that for an entry level at a bank, usually they don't necessarily need that banking background first.
Emily, may I add just one thing right quick? I think we may have neglected to say is that I think we discussed about salary levels and such, but I think HR would have it that we need to talk about package deals, right?
Yes.
When we have people. So let's just quickly say, what does First Tech pay for an individual who joins at what level department, right? And these comes with different level of packages. I think you mentioned earlier a student compensations, but there are 401k compensations. There are vacation times that are given for free, holiday time off. All of these packages amount to a dollar amount eventually. So that also is a very important things that you need to discuss when you apply for a job, and what are those packages, what are those benefits.
Perfect. And Sirak, just to add to that, as part of First Tech, one of our really great benefits is we have employee rates on our credit cards. And then we also have very generous discounts if you go get a mortgage through First Tech. So that really does help with that compensation. And I will say the PTO here, the paid time off, is very generous as well. And then just depending on who your manager is, there's also a lot more flexibility here than I've ever seen at any other workforce with leadership. If, it's obviously role specific, because even on my team, there's some people that know you have to be there for frontline support at a certain time. But other than that, we really give our team a lot of flexibility because we know life happens and we care about them as people and want to be an employer of choice. So that was a great call out.
Yes, thank you so much. I was hoping we would touch on the benefits package as well as an employee at First Tech. And folks also have time to volunteer. We work with our managers to ensure that based off of job function and scheduling, that every single employee at least has an opportunity a few times per year to get involved in community efforts as well, such as these lovely folks here today. Alrighty, there was one last question in the chat here. I believe someone asked, do you have to be good with math in order to be in these three careers? And something I want to quickly mention before our three panelists answer this question is every institution has a variety of different departments. We have a marketing department. We have an information technology department. So not every single employee at a financial services industry will directly be working with money. So something to be aware of. But Isabel, would you like to go first and talk about the incorporation of math in your job?
Yeah, so we obviously deal with cash, and we deal with a lot of cash. So you don't need to be good at complex math, such as like algebra, multiplication, but you do need to be at least somewhat well at basic functions like addition and subtraction. However, we are very, very lucky that the systems that we use make it pretty hard for you to mess up that math. But it is a good fallback to have and to help you through that. And then I will say, just because I do have a few employees and I use them actually for part of a volunteer event where we help children who have dyslexia understand that having dyslexia or learning disability does not prevent you from being able to go into a workplace that does deal with a lot of numbers. And so 2 of my employees do have dyslexia, and it's just a matter of how do we work with what we have to make the most sense. So knowing that we have that, you don't have to be great at math, but just basic, simple addition and subtraction, and know that we have programs in place that make it pretty difficult not to balance. So hopefully that answers that.
That's perfect. Thank you. C-Rock, would you be able to answer the same question regarding math in your function?
Absolutely. Math is just one subject, right? Do you have to have a math degree to work in a financial institution? No, but anytime that you have a good understanding of math, I think it helps you in any position that I know of. If you're writing codes for a computer, if you're doing interest calculations for a financial institution, yes, the systems will do all of these things for you. I'm pretty sure there are applications that can do all kinds of different math, but your understanding is important. You don't have to specialize in math, but any education that you get is helpful with any job that I think would be helpful, especially in a financial institution. For my specific department, do we use formulas? Do we use any specific math to help us with investigation? Not necessarily. We do some interest calculations. We try to figure out certain percentages of what is this or that, especially if you're doing reports. You're doing any analytical work. Yes, some math skills would be very helpful, but not required.
Perfect. Thank you. And Ashley?
I would say basic understanding of math concepts is critical, like, addition, subtraction, those type of things, but you don't have to be able to do long division like off the top of your head. We definitely use calculators. I use spreadsheets. I use Excel for the most complex math type things that I do is really when we're looking at our rules or when I'm doing board reporting, because we send up to the board every month, how many fraud cases we had, how much we prevented, how much got through. And then we also do things like false positive ratios. So how many alerts fired based on the whole population of transactions. So let's say we're going to look at all the wire transactions that happened in the entire credit union. Well, what population of those were we able to catch that were fraud or how many fraud transactions did we have that month divided by that whole population? So we're really looking at false positive ratios, and these are really just concepts. You don't have to be able to do the math very easily yourself, because you really can use things like Excel. And that's something that I would recommend, is finding ways to use tools to help you in areas that you might have areas of opportunity for growth, and really finding out the tools that you can leverage to increase that. You don't have to know it off the top of your head, and it's not real complex.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We appreciate you all hanging tight with us while we go over 15 minutes past our time. Those were some incredible questions. So thank you all for asking those. Before we leave each other and sign off, Ashley, C-Rock, Isabel, any last comments that you'd like to make to the students?
I would just say, if you guys are interested in a career in fraud at all, it is definitely a growing industry. The faster money moves, which is the way the industry is going, the faster payments happen, the more risk there is, especially as we have a global economy and then things like cryptocurrency. So fraud is definitely a growing industry. If it's something that you're interested in, I would recommend really just start by trying to understand banking concepts. What is an ACH? What is a mobile deposit? How do these things differ? And then there's so many resources out there. Frankonfraud.com is a great site that talks about fraud trends in the industry. And so there's just so many resources out there for you to explore your interest. And that's what I really recommend. Is a lot of the times when you think about what you want to do with your life, we picture it a lot differently than it really is. So I think engaging yourselves in things like today is such a great choice to just get as much information as you can about those roles and explore different things, because you're always going to grow and evolve, but just kind of having an understanding of what you do like, what you don't like, what makes you happy, what does stress you out, and just kind of looking for different opportunities as you go.
Thank you, Ashley. That's perfect. C-Rock, Isabel, any final comments? It's okay if not.
Yeah, I do. Just briefly, whether or not you look for employment opportunity with a financial institution, understanding your own personal finance to start with is absolute necessity as far as I'm concerned, because the decisions that you make every day from now on will affect you eventually at one point or another, bad or good. So the more you understand your financial situation, your financial responsibilities, your financial relationship with any financial institution, whether you're making an investment or whether you're just doing your daily transactions, it is very important that you understand what you're signing up for. I think Ashley just mentioned about the ever-growing complex process of transactions these days. What's cryptocurrency, right? What are digital wallets? What's electronic transfers? What are all these things that people buzz about every day? How does that affect me? What do I sign up for? What is it exactly what I'm doing? How much am I exposing myself to external folks that don't need to know about me more? So these are all the things. But eventually, once you understand this, where you stand, it really, if you make the transition working for a financial institution, then it makes it really easy for you to know what all what we do here in any department in a financial institution. Understanding background with yourself to start with is absolutely important.
Perfect. Thank you.
For myself, it was just more along the lines of, if you don't have a bank account now, talk to your parents, right? Talk about, most financial institutions offer accounts for minors, so for children under 18, so that you can start utilizing yourself and setting yourself up for success with those small steps. So it does give you a good understanding. And if you do want to go into whether it's a traditional branch or an opportunity, usually the traditional branch will offer you that experience foundationally to help you move on to other departments. To start with yourself first. Obviously, I'm going to say come to us, but nonetheless, talk to your parents and, get yourself that education. And if you already started it, kudos to you. Just gives you a little bit more insight. And I look forward to hopefully hearing about all the amazing things you guys get to accomplish later on in life.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for your time today. Goldie Luck and Catherine, thank you so much for hosting us. And if there are any questions from students later on in the week or, anytime, feel free to reach out to us and we're happy to have conversations with folks.
Thank you so much for
Great. Thank you.
volunteering your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
Have a great
you.
day.